Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scouser's morning coffee or tea with AmericanScouser.com. It's Friday. Kermit is back. He's green and loving it. I'm back. And with us, as always, it's Friday, so Alex is back. Alex, what's happening, man?
Oh, nothing. Not a whole lot.
What
Just
do we got
excited
going
for
this morning? Energy drink in the car? What do we have?
not just water.
Just water this morning. See, you gotta have the coffee or tea, or
Yeah.
or like at least bring the fake coffee. What we believe to be fake coffee, like the Polish prince. See, we get the news update from Alan and weather update now too. Good morning, gents. Fine, bright, warm, sunny morning here in Houston. Yes, thanks for saying that. It is hell over here. Well, I did not realize it was kind of going to be snowy till I opened the door for the dogs. Who let the dogs out? When I let them out, and yeah, it's not so pretty, but we're almost there. It's mid-March. The bad thing is, the weather is like this not now, and Layla's about to start soccer, so we'll be watching a lot of outdoor soccer in this weather. That's the downfall right there. These March games can be a little painful to go to. But speaking of games, in less than 24 hours over here, we're going to know if like the streak is really on and this team is going full speed or not. What is your gut feeling before we get into the news? In 24 hours, are we going to be like, oh yeah, baby, we're back? Or are we going to be like, God, what is going on up and down?
Uh, I think it, it could be a cagey affair. I mean, to be honest with you,
Pull the trigger. Which one are you going to be saying in 24
I,
hours?
I think we'll be saying that they're back, but I think it'll be kind of like a nervy one, maybe like 2-0. Yeah, but that's the thing. We're going to be playing a lot of teams that are going to need the points, and Bournemouth last weekend they thought they were going to get 3, maybe 1 point over Arsenal, and then it was snatched away in the 97 minutes. So hopefully that works in our favor. They're still kind of whole tail between the legs type thing, and we smell blood and we go for it. So I think this is the turnaround, but ultimately it's going to be tomorrow. What we'll see. It's good, but it's good that the front three scoring. I think that's the biggest thing. If we can get the front three scoring, I think he's figured out his midfield, and it looks like the back line's pretty solid now. So if he starts with that lineup that started against Manchester United. I think we'll do fine.
Stan Collymore just said on the radio, Redman win 3-1, says Allen. So that could be a kiss of death too. We'll see. I feel like we will eke out a win. I don't see it being as dominant as last game because nobody plays as naive as United plays or gives up, like, especially if they're home. I don't think, I mean, United is a different scenario, I guess. They could have like collapsed like that at home, even worse. We saw that in the 5-0 game where the fans turned on them as well. I don't think they would turn on them as much right now because they were on a run, mind you, but still, Bournemouth being home, early freaking game where we always start kind of like half asleep, which I'm not too thrilled about. Those are going to be like the issues that I worry about. But yeah, I think in 24 hours, we're like, okay, the streak is on kind of a thing, and we're going to be going on. It's going to be interesting to see what the lineup is. So he gave some updates on the injuries. Diaz actually starting team practices next week. So you almost get the feeling that he would be available to kind of like show up in like 10 to 14 days as a sub. And then eventually, I really don't think still, I mean, we're already like mid-March over here almost.
Yeah.
So I really don't think we're going to see the Diaz that we were watching, probably not till next season. But you never know. We never seen him. Well, we were about to, but then he had like kind of like a setback. First of all, we're gonna see if he has a setback because he was practicing with the team right after the World Cup, and he wasn't able to come back. He had like kind of like a setback there. But we never seen Diaz come back from an injury. Every player is a little different when they come back from injury. Some of them hit the ground running. Some of them kind of like take time to kind of like get back to game speed and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see because you can use. I mean, I feel like we have enough rotation up top with Jota and Bobby still in the ranks. So the question now is, who starts in midfield tomorrow? Do you roll out the same three? Main concern being, can this same three go out there and do the same thing all the time with old legs?
I think if they were to change anything, I think it'd be Basicic, Henderson, and Fabinho. I think that's what he's going to go with because I think that was the midfield three he started with
So wait,
Wolves.
you're benching Elliott? I'm confused. Say that again.
Yeah, I think right now. Well, let's see. On the Wolves game, was it Basicic? Wasn't it Basicic, Henderson, and Fabinho? Right?
I'm going back there. You keep going while I pull that up.
Okay. But we're so prepared. But but
Oh, I
I
did. I don't remember what I ate last night, so for me to remember
yeah.
that 11 is really asking a lot out of my memory at this age.
Uh, I think he will put Basicic in there because I think Basicic does, like you brought it up in the past. Elliot has kind of like that habit of like slowing it down. Sometimes I think Basicic keeps the ball going, and I think that's going to be key for a game like Bournemouth, who's probably going to sit back during the game because the last game they played against Liverpool, they lost 9-0. So
That's true. But it was Besetic, Fabinho, and Elliott who started against Wolves.
oh, okay. You know what? I think it might actually be that. I think it might be that three. I think I have been noticing that Elliott is doing a lot better getting the ball out of his feet quicker and getting it to Salah, and I think that's worked so much better. Um, Especially with how Salah plays, especially in the last game and then the Wolves game, he played a lot better. So I think they're going to go with that three. I think the biggest thing is like how I don't think Fabinho got a lot of praise in that Manchester United game and the in the Wolves game. He played a lot better in those two games, and I'm hoping we see him back to his full capabilities. I hope that's a good sign that maybe he's starting to get his confidence back in himself. So we'll see, but I think that will probably be the midfield three tomorrow.
Yeah, I expect the same lineup, to be honest. I think we put the same lineup out there. You need Henderson's leadership on the field,
Mm-hmm.
I feel. So, and that work rate, if we're going to play that aggressive way, how we play, he kind of starts things off. And if he has the legs, he can do that. I guess the question is going to be, is he going to have the legs to be able to do it? I think
Yeah.
Gally was talking about it. I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time. Really, ultimately, the goal should be using Hendo and Milner to total like one
Mm-hmm.
person at 90 minutes. So you get 60
Yeah.
from one, 30 from the other, 70, 20, or whatever. It
Mm-hmm.
will Hendo be able to give that to you. And like I say, at this point in time, your Real Madrid game is more like, let's see what happens, as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to, putting all your eggs in that basket. So I think this
Yeah.
is more and more important right now. So you start the ideal 11 in this game, which would include Henderson, in my opinion. And
Mm-hmm.
then come Tuesday, you say, okay, who's ready to go? And then you decide it that way. And then
Mm-hmm.
we move forward that side. So I'm hoping that's what we do. Put Henderson out there, like the same 11 out there, showing, and that will gain some momentum, I think, for this team too. And you never know if you get a lead and stuff. So hopefully you can start rotating and, get people in the 60th minute
Right.
and stuff like that, and let's save some legs. So let's hope for the ideal scenario there. But let's take a look at a couple of headlines. Let's start with this one first. Mike Gordon is back in action. So obviously he had taken some time off, and now, kind of like it was the winter, he's back. At the time when he stepped out away, it was more seen as, okay, the sale is happening. FSG is kind of like slowly pulling the forces back, kind of an ordeal. But him coming back, does that signal anything in terms of, I mean, the way I almost read it as, and I don't know, maybe it's wishful thinking on my part, hey, there's going to be a lot of freaking money being spent over here, dude. We need you there
Yeah.
to run the show again.
Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head for that one. I think it's going to be a pretty big spending spree for Liverpool this season. I know they need the money, they need to qualify for Europe, but I think they're lining up some investors to put some money into this club. So I think this is their roll at the dice, really. And they're like, hey, we need to, our plan A wasn't working. We need to go back to our old plan, so which is plan B. I think that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like I say, it's maybe optimism, but it sounds like, maybe they did get that investment they were looking for, and money is going to be spent. They're all back in full force, and they want their guy. He has always been kind of like the FSG's guy in terms of Liverpool. It's almost like, the Liverpool edition is him. And
Yeah.
I think it almost signals, like there's going to be money spent. We need you over there to monitor the stuff. And maybe like that's why he was taking some time off while they figured this stuff out. And maybe FSG said, hey, if you find the money, we stay. If not, maybe we'll sell. Sounds like they found the money. So we'll find out if they found the money, how much money they found, and all that kind of good stuff. Because we're hearing, like, as we're nearing the season now, aside from the people that we knew we were losing because their contract is up, whether it's Ox or Nabi or whatever. I mean, you can argue if they're losses, but I mean, I was on which, by the way, is out. If you guys would like to head over there and listen, a great duo. They do like good content, and they bring like guests from like different clubs who know more about the clubs. PL and PJs is the podcast. I mean, actually, I'll put the link in this description as well later on. I was there on Tuesday recording it. The episode just went out on Thursday, and one of the questions they asked was, I guess somebody had asked them to almost like ask me, but who would we miss out of these three? And the question was Nabi, Ox, and Bobby. And I was like, but that's a slam shot. I mean, that's like that's a beach ball. Let me throw that back at you guys. So, I mean, definitely Bobby, but, now you're losing Bobby as well. You find out that Matip is probably leaving as well. So there's going to have to be a lot of newcomers coming in. So there's going to be a lot of hands-on action, a lot of money being spent.
Well, I mean, even the Matip one makes sense because for a good chunk, it kind of really seemed like Matip was the fourth choice this year. But with injuries and everything, he probably got more playing time. I think he's 32 this fall, maybe this summer.
Let me ask Uncle Google here. But I think you're right. 31.
Okay, yeah, so
you're almost there.
On his way out, especially when we have the likes of Gomez, Kanate. If we get that Serbian, if we get that, is he Serbian or Croatian?
Who?
Is it Gastroval?
Well, he was in the World Cup. I guess they were both in the World Cup. I think I want to say Serbia.
Okay, yeah. If he gets it, I mean, if we go in on him, Matip probably has to leave if he wants to get
Croatia. Sorry, damn it.
Okay, and we still have likes of Sepp Vandenberg, who's doing really good over in Germany. So it's like at this point, he's kind of like down on the pecking order for center back.
Somebody posted a stats about like the fastest, like in Bundesliga. I mean, obviously in a specific point, not in general. And I was like, really? Because one thing I thought when we watched him, and I remember it was a game and we were like following it on Discord, chatting about it. I was worried about his pace. And sometimes I think with him, especially as a center back, the main issue is like the pace and agility are two different things. With him, it was like when he was turning around, it was a lot slower, like turning around and chasing somebody. So maybe he's really fast going at full speed. But that's kind of option that we can bring back as well.
Yeah. Well, I watched Bundesliga when there's not like a Premier League game that I really want to watch, or like somebody's losing like 3-0, like City's beating somebody 3-0. Okay, let's turn to Bundesliga. And I watched Hoffenheim, I think it was last weekend or 2 weekends ago. And I was watching him play. And from when I could see when he was at Blackburn to Preston, sorry. He looks like he has changed a lot. Like he's really worked on his basics. He's really worked on his fundamentals. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see what he can bring to us next season.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think we saw enough of him. I just feel like usually when we send somebody on loan, that's kind of like the last you see of them. I mean, that's kind of like been the, the club way. It almost feels like if we feel like he's going to work out, we kind of like keep him and want him to practice with us, learn our system. I mean, I can't think of a lot of names where we loaned them out and then we brought them back and they were like big times. Sorry, Elliott's maybe? Did Elliott go on loan first when we signed him?
At Blackburn for like
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but you don't see a lot of these. I mean, like all these guys that we've sent and said, yeah, let's send them on loan and see what happens, and the Kent and the Wilson and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they were gone. You never saw them again. So,
Yeah.
it kind of like helps bring their price up, obviously, as opposed to, like them sitting at the end of the bench. So it's kind of like a smart move. And I think you get to see if they can really make a difference. I mean, like, oh, maybe we'll give them one more shots and like another off-season kind of a deal. But yeah, it's gonna, like I say, there's gonna be a lot of players coming in with a lot going out. It is quite the overhaul. I mean, we just said midfield. Now you almost need to replace Bobby, because obviously we never replaced. Well, I mean, I guess we did, but last year you lost Divock and Taki up top. So we know when you lose somebody, you gotta kind of like replace them. That's why we brought Gakpo in like winter.
Yeah.
But I think, we bring somebody in for the top. You need like 3 to 4 midfielders basically. And now you're going to need at least a couple of center backs, it feels like. And on top of that, we don't know how Ramsey's situation is going to turn out. So you might end up needing another right back to back up. And then you don't know who's going to be leaving. I mean, obviously, some people are going to be sold to finance some of these moves as well. So it's going to be a very active off season, it feels like. But let's talk about this real quick as well. Obviously, we put the week behind. We talked about Real Madrid and stuff. But let's talk about like what we saw this week. So Tottenham, Milan, obviously Milan goes through, Bayern goes through, Chelsea in that debacle goes through, and Benfica crushes Club Brugge on the way out. Any surprises for you here?
I wish I could say I was surprised by Tottenham, but I'm not. I think I was probably more surprised.
Well, I wish I would say I would.
I think I'm more surprised that Chelsea pulled it out. I thought Dortmund was probably gonna just kind of run away with it, really. But they didn't. And Chelsea, maybe this is a turning point for Graham Potter, at Chelsea. That was a big, in my opinion, that was a big win for him, and that was a big win for the club. And they're on to the next round. So all credit to them.
But I feel like that's one of those things where that's your last shot. That's the last thing you got to hang on to for the season. And they were able to, mind you, barely with that weird penalty and the retake and all that kind of stuff. But I kind of called the Milan ordeal. I think when we were talking with Rami on Wednesday, I'm more shocked that they did not get a goal in, which at the end, good old Divock hit the post and stuff. They were about to squeeze one in the last seconds, but those were like the last seconds where Tottenham was going all in. I kind of felt, Tottenham would go all out and Milan would be able to get a goal and that would end that way. I didn't watch that game. I watched the Bayern game over. And, it felt like Bayern made easy sort of that good old Neymar should have been on the field. That would be even more joyous. Carragher was talking about this. So let me ask you this. Carragher was saying that he was flat out happy. And you really have somebody in the studio saying, yes, they're out for like a team that they were just like commentating on. In terms of PSG going out, because they're not a team, they're more like the Harlem Globetrotters right now. Where do you stand on that?
I think a lot of people view PSG as that. I think anybody really outside of the Paris fan base really view PSG like that. So, I mean, I can't say I disagree with him either, because I was happy that PSG was out.
Let me ask you this, because Gally was talking about this on the Discord channel. Like we were actually discussing it back and forth. I don't personally have as much of a dislike for Bayern as I do for PSG, even though, if I watch Bundesliga, I'm rooting for Dortmund usually. Even before this whole Klopp ordeal, I feel like, that's a team that's easier to root for. Because similar to, like Liverpool's sense of deals. But
Mhm.
so Bayern is pretty much the same thing. I mean, what, they won Bundesliga 85 times in a row. So they are, if they struggle, they see a guy in their opposing team that they struggle against, and they're like, you know what, we'll just buy him, I guess. And it's like it's kind of like the pinnacle of football for any German. So it's very easy for them to lure all the German players over there. How come Bayern does not get as much hate as PSG? Because it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't from me first of all. But why do you think that is?
Well, I think one of the reasons is I think the Bundesliga, especially this year, for the title race is way more competitive. And I think most teams, except for, I think, the season where they technically won the treble. Each season has been close until the final couple weeks of the season where Bayern win it. PSG usually pulls away come December time. So, and they just throw money at people, and Bayern can't really do that with the 51% rule. So, I think that's probably why people like Bayern more. I think Bayern
But
just
in
has.
some ways, they do. I mean, they go and say, who's going against us? Who gave us trouble last year? Dortmund? Damn it. Okay, we'll get this guy from Dortmund then. And they just get him. I mean, they get what they want. I know what you're saying in terms of the
Yeah,
rule. And they
yeah.
do invest smart. They'll push on a player that's old and sell him, and they'll get like a younger version of them. Especially they do this for wingers a lot. And then they keep like an experienced old base like the Millers and stuff like that. But I mean, they pretty much do the same thing.
Mhm.
Bayern does just not make moves that are as splashy worldwide. They
Yeah.
go and get the best out of the Bundesliga. So
Mhm.
maybe, they don't get as much attention because not as many people pay attention to Bundesliga. Whereas, I don't know, like PSG goes and gets Messi,
Mhm.
goes and gets Neymar and stuff like that. Whereas, Bayern says, who's the best player in Germany? Let's go get him. Nobody knows him probably anyway outside of Germany. And we're the biggest, any German, it's kind of like Italians are the same way, I feel. They'll rather go to the top team in their own league as opposed to roll the dice and go to like an international league. And Bayern milks the hell out of that.
Mhm. Well, I also want to bring up this too. My personal opinion, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but I think Bayern has a lot more likable players, like attitude, gamesmanship, all that stuff. As you look at PSG, you got like Neymar. I mean, Messi at sometimes can like throw a fit. And they had what's his face? What was he was a striker. Argentina. He was from Argentina. He played for Inter Milan. Oh, he was there for a little bit. He's got his wife as his agent. You know who I'm talking about?
Icardi?
Yeah, Icardi. I mean, they had Icardi
Yes,
there.
he's in Galatasaray right now. Only got worse for him. He only
Yeah,
became more unlikable. Yeah.
yeah. So like they have a lot of unlikable characters there, and I think that's another reason why people are not so keen on PSG. And they're like, oh, I don't want to see him win, type stuff. So I think that also plays into Bayern's favor because they got like Mane and Sane and Serge Gnabry, and they have all those guys, and all those guys are fun to watch and they're likable people. So I think that's another thing too. I think
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe they get more respect. Like Bayern has always been around,
yeah.
so they get that. Whereas PSG has a more like the new Manchester City kind of feel to it, where they're only relevant because they're splashing ridiculous money. And yeah, I think and overall, aside from that, I think the Bundesliga does get more respect compared to the French league, and rightfully so. I would say I'm a lot better
Yeah.
teams overall, a lot better competition overall. I know it is pretty one-sided, like I say, but at least when you watch games within, um, it looks like the gap has closed a little bit more because it used to
Yeah.
be, Bayern just blowing everybody away, but it's still like this is what happens, like they're like, oh, like so and so, like Dortmund is going to keep up with them, and then something happens in March, then they're like, like they win by like 10 points. So like Union Berlin already is falling off that race. I know they're your boys, but they look like they're already falling off the race. That's the thing; it's kind of hard to keep up because nobody has their depth.
Oh yeah, like Union Berlin, they have. I mean, they just have basically their starting 11. That's really it. Because if you ever look at their bench, you're like, I don't know who any of these people are. So like, that's one of the biggest things. Is their depth really out. They can basically just their depth will be their be positive.
See, Sparky says it's time to end the PSG project and the money moves somewhere else. I don't know. It almost feels like the safe spot too, right? You're guaranteed almost a win because you're gonna win the league unless like a miracle happens or you get Pochettino in charge or something. But aside from that, you're gonna win the league, so it feels almost semi-guaranteed. But I think that's the problem. There is that is almost guaranteed that you're gonna win the league. So I think, especially for fans, that does not bring much joy anymore. So they're like, okay, like the Champions League. So when this happens, it feels like a huge collapse now because really all the other stuff was already in the bag. This is what you were really after, and it doesn't happen year after year after year. And I think maybe to Sparky's point, I don't know if they would ever get smart about spending the money because they spend the money like a 12-year-old playing FIFA, and they just narrow down the transfer market search by strikers. And I think maybe part of the ordeal is they get players who are not, I hate the phrase, but I think there's some validity to it, as hungry in terms, like Ramos. You see Ramos leaving that game. I mean, he's more like, well, this kind of sucks because I'm used to winning this shit. Like as he's leaving, he has that kind of look on himself. You look at Messi, it's kind of like the same thing. You almost need a bit more. I know we kind of disappeared in this game, but Mbappe kind of people who have not had that success. So maybe they work harder and they become more of a team, a unified goal, as opposed to having some guys that are like at that commercial where they're like on the moon. The guy is like, yeah, been there. He's like playing golf in the background. I mean, it's kind of like gives that impression to me. Like, and you watch at the end of the game how they shake hands and stuff like that. And you can kind of tell the PSG players who've been there, done that, had more of like, it is what it is. What are you going to do? This is the Champions League. It's tough sometimes. And, that was it. Whereas you saw some other players who felt like, God damn it, this is what we really wanted.
Yeah. But I think, I guess another good point is I think a lot of the same flack that PSG gets, Man City also gets. There's a lot of people out there that are not a big fan of, somebody throwing money to win things. But Manchester City and PSG, they don't have like the history of their club, like a Liverpool or Manchester United, Bayern Munich, anybody like that, where it's prestigious to be in European Cup, European Cups. They've won cups, they've done all that stuff. So like, there's that want to keep winning those more. Unlike Manchester City, 20 years ago, they were fighting in the championship. Or PSG.
But here's the thing. I mean, I understand that, and I think you can draw parallels because of the ownership and like the like a nation team and stuff like that. But at the same time, at least, I mean, here's the difference to me. City is going against teams that are also spending a lot of money.
Yeah.
Whereas, like Bayern and, PSG are going against teams that are nowhere near the same amounts. I mean, United, for example, spends just as much, if not more, than City. So now you have Newcastle in the mix. I mean, you have Chelsea in the mix. So they're actually at least competing against other guys who are throwing away money, as opposed to PSG and Bayern, who are, it's like the guy at the poker table who has all the chips. He was like, I'm all in. Like he just like matches what you have, but really it's like a little chunk of what he has.
No, I agree with that too. And it seems like they have an issue with getting somebody to take the job when they move on to the next one, because it kind of seems like it's a poison chalice at this point. Uh, who wants to be cursed coaching PSG, especially if you get knocked out in the early rounds of the knockout stage, you know? Because what they've had Ancelotti, and I mean, they've had basically everybody. They have the guy that's coaching there now that won it with Lille over PSG. So they got a lot of issues, and I think all the issues come from up top, unfortunately. I agree with the whole, those commercial signings, Messi, you know, Ramos, everybody that they usually get into the club. They've been there before. They won it with different teams. But I think I agree with you. I think if they just invest on younger players that haven't had that, they don't know what that success is like, that'll probably help them in the future. But right now they just somehow they're always
go ahead. Go finish your thought.
Somehow they're always favorites, kind of like City, but yet they always seem to lose early in the Champions League. Maybe Europa League will be good for them.
I mean, the thing is, there's something to be said about bringing somebody in that's been there, done that. But I think you gotta watch the ratio. Like, it's one thing to have a guy who can kind of tell you how it is, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I was watching, and if you haven't watched this, obviously because he's a United guy, not a big fan of him. But I was watching, as I watched the reaction to the 7-0 and stuff, Rio Ferdinand had a video that he posted 15 minutes or whatever, just him and a phone after the game. And then I watched a podcast afterwards that he's on, and he was talking about, and one of the things he was talking about, going to Anfield and how different it is to play at Anfield and why it's a special place to play and why it's a very difficult place to play. And he was talking about how hard it is to even prepare somebody who has not been there. And, it's important to have a guy who's been there to tell you what to expect. And Rio was talking about, you can't prepare anybody for that. Arteta's stupid speakers it doesn't work like that. You cannot prepare somebody, but I think at least having somebody experienced can tell you, hey, it's going to be a shock. Get ready for this shit. So maybe it is good to have somebody experienced like Ramos and stuff like that to be like, hey guys, these are going to happen. This is what you do in these scenarios and stuff. But I think when that number is too much, then the hunger part goes away. And, and here's another thing. You're getting a guy. There's a reason why Ramos is there now, because Real is like, yep, we're done with this ordeal. We're going younger. We're going younger, faster, and stuff like that. So I think that's the Ellen says onion. Sparky says if PSG don't win Champions League, then it's a failed season. And that's the problem. I mean, because the other one is not an achievement, because anybody, we could put, stick Leo in charge over here, put his paw on the players and, go out of lineup and probably could still win League One. But that's your challenge. That's your only challenge. And if you don't win it, and unfortunately, it's like a win or lose kind of an ordeal, automatic success. So let me ask you this, and I want Sparky and Alan and whoever else is right now live with us to answer as well. If you had the opportunity to be a manager at City, Bayern, or PSG, which one are you choosing?
Bayern.
Why?
I just the stadium, the atmosphere, the fans, the league. To some degree, the ownership, but yeah, those just being able to be part of Bayern would be amazing. With all
Sparky says City. Is that so that you're home? That's the question. Is that a bias? Because I understand what you mean for Bayern, for example.
Well, Sparky's probably the 12-year-old that, just spends all the money on the transfer market. So that's probably why he
man, Sparky is actually my age, I think.
Okay. But
maybe he's older. Let's hope he's older so that I'm younger. But
he just goes out there. He turns on
but that's the same thing. Here's the thing. You keep saying Bayern doesn't spend money. It's the same shit. You're just you're trying to separate them, but it's the same stuff. They spend whatever money they want. They just spend it in Bundesliga. So all these three teams, Yes, Sparky is 58. He's older than me. I'm such a young guy. But so that's the thing. All these three teams spend money.
Yeah.
It's different levels of competition in my mind. They
Right.
all have funds that where you can go get what you want. So you're making it sound like Bayern just scrapes away, but they're the big boys. They're they're the PSG of Bundesliga. They're just more of a bully in the Bundesliga as opposed to bully in Europe, like PSG wants to be. Maybe that's what PSG should do, be more of a bully in France only and get those young players, because that's what happens. Any young player that, Liverpool is monitoring, don't even worry or waste time monitoring a young German kid, because he's going to be at Bayern next year. Or that rumor only comes out to bring his price a little bit more on his way to Bayern.
Yeah.
See, Sparky says he wants the competition every week. That's fair. I would not take that route personally. Like I say, I would probably say Bayern too, but and just for the reasons you said, I think. I mean, it's kind of, you still have some competition, like a hint of competition, but I think the ownership kind of helps the ordeal. And to me, the biggest factor you said is the stadium and the history and stuff like that kind of helps me pick that over, I think, City, because the fan base and the stadium is kind of more of a joke compared to Bayern, for example.
Oh yeah, that just if you were the manager and you had that vibrant atmosphere at home every week, you would love going. You wouldn't be able to sleep before a match day because you're so excited, because it just looks like a fun place to go be a manager at.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it. Newcastle would be fun at the moment, says Sparky. I think at least, it brings you that fan base, right? And I mean, their fan base is awesome. And, like the stadium, the environment and stuff like that. So like, for example, if you said Newcastle or City, I would probably say Newcastle. So that's definitely fair. I think that's the one thing that takes me away from City is in that sense. And the competition is a good one. That's like an interesting question. I might save this for the podcast and see who everybody else picks. So before we go over here, 24 hours from now, we said we're going to find out if the streak is continuing. Give me a score prediction.
I'm saying 2-0 Liverpool.
2-0 Liverpool. Man, you guys are going with a clean sheet and everything. I'll take the win. I'm thinking more of like a 2-1 or a 3-1 kind of a game. Sparky says 3-1 as well. That works for me, as long as it's not a painful 3-1. It could be a painful 3-1 where it's like 2-1 and a lot of stressful moments and ends up being 3-1 in the 88th minute where they're going all in and we counter or something like that. I mean, that's the thing. I'm hoping, you were talking about this earlier about Bournemouth sitting back. I am hoping that, that's the home crowd does not let them do that and kind of like push him to attack a little bit so we can counter, because that's still our strength. And now we got even more pace because you have, you on top of it have now Gakpo speed too. I mean, before it was just like the wings. Now you have speed up in the middle as well. So it should be interesting. Even Jesus couldn't help PSG. Or is that Jesus? I don't know which one that is. But Alan never picked it. Saida says 3-0. Man, I hope so. I love the optimism, though. I hope so. The clean sheet you guys are big on. I just feel like it's got. I mean, we've given up chances. Eventually, something's going to go against our way on a set piece or something like that. I just hope we get the win, continue the streak. I mean, like I said, when I was on that podcast that I heard yesterday, they were also asking me about, we were looking at the next 5 fixtures. A lot of tough games in there. So when you look, though, like this Bournemouth and Leeds and stuff like that, at least on paper, 3 points should be yours. You got to capitalize on that. So a draw versus City away, for example, does not hurt, and you take it as like a point and be able to move on. Whereas if you lose points here, those become must-win games. Whereas I think right now they're not necessarily must-win games. But let's hope for the best. So Monday, when we gather with the gang, or in the morning with the Polish Prince, we're talking about yet another win. The only good news is, one way or the other, Saturday morning, it's done, so it's not going to ruin your entire weekend if that's the case.
No,
and then we're going to have a whole full weekend.
We have to drive down to Kansas City because we're going to watch the home opener for Sporting Kansas City, so they can ruin the day for me tomorrow too. So
yeah, see, I don't have the Major League Soccer getting in the way. So like once this ordeal is done, hopefully get a win in the morning, start the weekend off good. we're springing forward this weekend, by the way, right?
Yep. So we got
set
that.
your time so you don't miss the morning shows. And then we will see you guys Monday morning, bright and early with the Polish Prince. Have an awesome weekend, everybody. Let's go get these 3 points and keep going.